Imagine if there was a drug that turned your reality into a real-life survival horror game. And over the course of the next 72 hours, you would experience horrors beyond your comprehension. Well, guess what? It exists, and there's probably some of it growing near your house right now. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back. My name is Chase. Today we're talking about one of my favorite topics, Datura. There's no sponsor on the video, so like, comment, and subscribe if you want to support me in the channel. It really helps a lot. Manscaped, Raid Shadow Legends, hit my line. I really need a check. Without further ado, let's get into it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy. Before we get into anything else, I think it's important to explain what Datura actually is, how it works in the body, and the effects that it produces. Datura is a hallucinogen, but it belongs to a specific subcategory of hallucinogens known as deliriants. You see, most psychedelics just distort your perception of reality, even if you're seeing very vivid hallucinations. There is somewhat of an underlying comfort that you took something that made you feel this way, and ideally you're gonna be back to normal in a few hours. With deliriants, there is none of that. Your perception of reality isn't just altered, it's completely destroyed. You will forget everything about yourself, who you are, what your name is, maybe even that you're human at all. Your surroundings will look completely alien to you, even if it's a place that you've been a million times before. It could even be your own house and you won't be able to recognize it. You see, the chemical compounds in Datura bind to the acetylcholine receptors in the brain. Acetylcholine is a vital neurotransmitter that sends signals throughout your nervous system. When too many of those acetylcholine receptors get blocked, a lot of bad things start to happen. At first, your mouth's gonna get really dry, and then your vision is gonna begin to blur. Then your heart's gonna begin to race, and because acetylcholine plays an important role in muscle control, you're gonna find it very hard to move and even breathe. Eventually, you end up in full-blown delirium, where you're seeing and hearing things that aren't really there, but everything you're experiencing is completely indistinguishable from reality. This stuff can very easily kill you. Your brain is essentially firing on error mode and is one step away from shutting down completely. If you saw my DPH video, this is probably all sounding very familiar. Datura and diphenhydramine are both deliriants, and the effects that they produce are extremely similar. The difference is that in Benadryl, the only anticholinergic substance is diphenhydramine. Every tablet is exactly 25 milligrams of DPH, sometimes 50 if you get the extra strength, but you know how much you're taking. With Datura, there are 3 anticholinergic compounds: scopolamine, hyoscyamine, and atropine. All 3 of these chemicals have some medical uses on their own, which aren't important. All you need to know is that all of them are anticholinergic and in high doses are deliriants. And you are flooding your body with insane doses of all 3 of them at the exact same time. Doesn't that sound like a great idea? On top of that, because Datura is a plant and not a medicine, the amount of each one of these compounds in every individual Datura plant vary greatly. Obviously, you shouldn't try to reach an altered state with Benadryl either. If you're considering that, I strongly urge you to reconsider your life and make smarter decisions. But at least with DPH, you actually know how much you're taking. With Datura, it's a complete shot in the dark. You have no idea how much of these compounds you're actually ingesting. Of course, a lethal dose of either of these is gonna be different for everyone, but needless to say, overdosing and dying is much easier to do when you have no idea how much of something you're taking. Now that we know what Datura is and how it works, let's talk about some of the really fascinating ways that it was used throughout history. For the Aztecs, Datura played an important role in their ceremonies. Shaman occasionally took Datura to communicate with the spirit world and seek guidance outside of the mortal realm. Datura was also administered to people who were chosen for the Aztecs' ritualistic sacrifices, because shockingly, it is way easier to convince somebody to willingly die when they have no idea what's going on around them and can barely move. Datura also played an important role in Chumash ceremonies, but for much less morbid reasons. In their culture, adolescent-aged boys would drink a Datura brew in order to transition them into adulthood. The effects were meant to show the child glimpses of the future and communicate their purpose in life. It was an important ceremony for them, and it was seen as a rite of passage into manhood. In my opinion, the most interesting historical use of Datura comes from Europe around the 16th century. If you're a normal person, the first thing that comes to mind when you think about witches is a flying broomstick. Well, this myth didn't just come out of nowhere. You see, the witches were actually hallucinating on Datura. In 1458, a man known as Abraham the Jew published an interesting account of him meeting a witch in Austria. The witch had an ointment, and both she and Abraham proceeded to spread said ointment over their pulse points. Abraham had an incredibly vivid experience of flying through the air and visiting a place that he had been wanting to visit. Eventually, he wakes back up in this witch's house, and she tells him all about her experience of flying through the night sky. Abraham wanted to investigate this farther and asked the witch to apply the ointment only to herself and allow him to observe. And big surprise here, she actually didn't end up flying. Instead, she passed out unconscious on the floor and laid there for multiple hours. When she awoke, she told Abraham more tales about her travels. You can actually find recipes for witches' flying ointment in works published in the 16th century. To make the ointment, various ingredients are needed, but it notably mentions the use of deadly nightshade, which is usually a nickname used for belladonna, which is kind of a sister plant to Datura. But Datura is also a deadly nightshade, and it was growing in Europe in the 16th century, so they likely used either of them. And if you're wondering how they made it into an ointment, they used fat from infants, specifically unbaptized infants. Which, that's cool, I guess. Also, on the subject of history, the Far Cry franchise is essentially history at this point because they haven't released a good game in nearly 10 years. In Far Cry 3, players experience vivid visions after ingesting a sacred plant brew, and although the substance that the player ingests is never specifically named, the ritual and the experience as a whole greatly mirrors Datura. A more direct connection to Datura comes in Far Cry 5. In the game, there is a cult known as Eden's Gate, which is led by the game's antagonist, Joseph Seed. Seed and other cult members use a substance known as bliss to convert people into joining the cult. You can find the chemical structure of bliss written throughout various locations in the game, and the chemical structure of bliss is the exact same as scopolamine, one of the anticholinergic compounds found in Datura. Probably the most infamous case of real-world Datura usage can be found on Reddit. In 2017, u/flipandflop made a post to r/drugs. Finally got my hands on some Datura. How much should I take? Hi guys, I finally got some Datura to try out. I'm free tomorrow and I have the house to myself, so I am really excited to try the effects of this interesting plant. I have around 60 seeds, some dried flowers, and leaves. How much should I take for a nice first-time trip? I was thinking of crushing up some seeds and making a tea with them, drink the tea and smoke a couple of leaves while the tea is starting to take effect. Would 15 seeds be enough? Sources on the internet tell me a regular dose is around 10 to 20, but I've seen some talk about 30 plus seeds. Thanks guys. Despite everyone in the comments telling him that this was a horrible idea and that he should take none of it, he proceeded anyways. Edit. Slowly drank the tea in half an hour. Didn't taste too bad. Not feeling much yet. I'll check back in with you guys in an hour or so. His update would be pretty indicative of how the trip was going. He would leave a comment under his own post simply writing, google.com, how normal again, stop now, and under a gif of two mammoths fighting in totally accurate battle simulator posted to r/gaming, he would leave the comment, please, these big dog are fighting, not okay. And that was the last anyone ever heard from u/flipandflop. What happened to him remains a mystery to this day. Some people dismiss this whole thing as a troll, others believe that he got medical help and ended up forgetting his Reddit login, and other people believe that he didn't manage to get medical help and that he is no longer with us. Now that we've talked about all that cool stuff, let's read a few people's real experiences taking Datura. Datura, a true hallucinogenic. Deliriants are true hallucinogens. Datura can turn even the most experienced psychonaut into a blubbering little baby. Not something for beginners, nothing like acid or shrooms. Years ago, at the end of high school summer break, a buddy of mine boiled up some leaves and drank it as a tea. They grow everywhere up here, and we knew a field close to a trail we would bike through that had tons of them. That summer, a friend and I would bike to his place most afternoons and usually just chill in his backyard for a bit, smoke a few bowls, and just shoot the shit. We found him covered in puke, only in his underwear, and sitting on the grass having full-on coherent conversations with invisible people. He appeared to have lost touch with reality, so we got him inside and babysat him for a bit. He opened up every drawer appearing to search for something. drank a glass of water, then proceeded to smash it on the ground, turned on his shower, and just stared at the running water. He would do bizarro shit like that until he eventually fell asleep, periodically waking up to talk to the invisible people. His parents were out of town for the week, so he had the house all to himself. Unfortunately, both of us had work in the AM, so we could not stay the night. He did have moments of lucidity and told us he was fine and he would just sleep the trip off. The next day, he was not home. We thought he sobered up and went out. His bike was gone. Well, it turns out he disappeared for a few days. Heard back from him 3 days later. He said the trip only started to wear off after the third day. It wasn't until a week he felt normal and the hallucinations completely stopped. After that trip though, he was never really the same. He used to be a really charismatic, funny, and extroverted person. He became more closed off, more serious, darker, and had a weirder sense of humor. On the surface he seemed normal, but those of us that knew him could tell something inside him changed. He hung out less, and when he did, after a few beers and a couple of joints, he would start to talk about spiritual matters, saying shit like how humanity has lost touch with our spiritual essence, and speaking of higher levels of existence. He would also go on about philosophical shit. Some of it did sound quite profound, other stuff a bit nutty. He dropped his pre-med university program, scholarship and all. Eventually we lost touch. He traveled a bit, did an English teaching gig in Vietnam for a few years. Last I heard, he was apparently living in a small town on the west coast and co-owns a small landscaping business. Apparently he called the crypto bubble well. He was posting about Bitcoin in 2012. Still weird and posts spiritual based content. I still creep his Facebook every once in a while and kind of wish we stayed in touch. My Datura related post. Microdosing Datura / how I went crazy for a year. I'd been experimenting lightly with Datura for a while. I'd add a bit of Datura leaf to a bowl of weed, but that was about it. I never wanted a full-on trip, I just thought it gave an interesting buzz. So I started growing the plants and they make a ton of seeds. I started to eat 3 seeds a day. It was a nice little buzz, kind of like weed, but one thing I noticed was at the end of the month, I'd start to trip out a bit. Things would just feel really dreamy, it's hard to describe. I figured maybe all the seeds I'd taken had started adding up and hadn't left my system. So I'd stopped taking the Datura seeds for a few weeks, rinse and repeat. Well, one day, after maybe 6 months of microdosing, I go into full-blown delirium. I remember being on the computer when something told me to Google a random string of characters. I did, and the only image that returned was a photo of the Arch Linux terminal. Note, I work in programming. That showed exactly what I was playing on my iPod, like I was being monitored. It was all downhill from there. Long story shorter, a couple of trippy incidents. I thought I was telepathically talking to a famous actress. Then I thought I was telepathically talking to a woman who worked for the government. This went on for weeks. Then I thought it was actually an AI the whole time. I remember once closing my eyes and swinging an axe at a piece of plank in front of my foot so I could test the precision on the AI and prove it didn't want to hurt me. Yeah, I nearly chopped off my toes. I also believed there were cars following me. Yeah, I was in full-blown paranoia, except I thought they were there to help me. I stopped eating the Datura pretty early on into the hallucinations, but it took a whole year for them to wear off completely. It took just as long for me to figure out that I was having delusions and nothing from the past year had been real. I ended up being diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic after having MRIs and stuff, but I refused any meds. Half of me still not believing I was hallucinating, and the other half scared of what the effects might be from the medication. About 2 years after the whole thing happened, I was back to normal. Obviously, it's hard to be sure what the hell happened there. Was it the Datura, or did I have a mental breakdown from something else? I can't say for sure. I don't take Datura anymore though, and I still smoke a lot of weed and things are back to normal. Everyone says don't take Datura. Listen to them. Truly the devil's plant. Ever since I heard of Datura from a friend at school a few years ago, I have always wanted to get a hold of some, asking dealers I know from around town, but I was never successful as many people I asked didn't even know what it was. So after a while, I gave up hope and continued with the usual smoking grass every day, occasionally scoring some ketamine or opium to make life a little more interesting. Then last year, I finally got a chance to try the stuff. One of my friends told me he had gone to stay with his grandparents for a week and noticed a plant near their house that looked a lot like Datura. So he went over to it, and sure enough, he saw the small, spiky pods growing near the bottom of the plant. He himself didn't want to try any because he always feared any sort of hallucinogen because of the risk of a bad trip, but knew I had been wanting to try it for quite some time. So he picked one of the magical pods and wrapped it up in cellophane and brought them back for me. The bastard wouldn't hand it over unless I paid him 20 bucks, but I figured it would be well worth it. I couldn't wait to try them. First thing I did was found someone who would be a sitter for me, and that sitter was the most trustworthy friend I know. Let's call him Steve. I asked my mom if he could sleep over, and she said it was fine. So the next day, Steve came over around noon, and I got the seeds out of the pod and counted 37. I heard it only took 10 or 15, and I wanted to have more so I could trip another time or sell them, so I decided to take 15. Me and Steve went up to my room to take them. We put on some music and sat down in my beanbag chairs. I was feeling confident that things were going to go smoothly, mostly just because Steve was there with me. He was a very responsible person who I felt very safe and secure with. Of course, I had a little butterflies in my stomach because I was taking something new, but it was mostly excitement, a total I can't wait feeling. As Steve and I talked, I decided it was time and pulled the sandwich baggie out of my pocket. I got all the seeds in my palm and looked at them, little teardrop-shaped things, darkish brown, almost black. I thought to myself, here goes nothing, and licked my palm to get all the seeds stuck to my tongue, chewed them up a bit, and swallowed. As they went down, I got this overwhelming feeling of finally. I have finally taken this crazy Datura, and in time I will be experiencing it. All I could do now is relax, keep the best state of mind I possibly could, and wait for things to kick in. I went down to the kitchen with Steve to get a drink of water, and then I went to the bathroom. No noticeable effects. Steve suggested we play video games while we wait for it to kick in. We went back up to my room and played Mario Kart 64 and snacked on some Doritos. Eventually I started to feel different. A lot like when you need to stretch really bad, but in my whole body. Mouth is getting dry, very similar to the cotton mouth after smoking a blunt. Steve is winning the game and I am losing my grip on the controller, and I can't seem to keep the A button pushed down. After about 10 minutes, I feel much different, very intense, and I'm wondering why Steve is in my room playing video games. He reminds me that he is sleeping over to watch me because I took Datura. Right after he says this, a wave of shock and fear run down my body like goosebumps, for I had completely forgotten the reason he was there and that I had taken anything, although I do recall it. I am now, needless to say, in shock at what just happened with my brain. I look at Steve and say, calm me down, and somehow Steve knew exactly what to do. He just smiled at me in this reassuring smile and said, don't worry man, you're gonna have a blast. This made me feel incredibly better and my mood shifted. After this, things seemed to go back to normal and I asked Steve to stop playing video games and go downstairs with me. We go downstairs into my kitchen and I pull a full pitcher of cherry Kool-Aid from the fridge. Steve got 2 glasses, then we went back into my living room and sat down on the couch. I pour the both of us a glass and we sip it while watching TV. After I finish my glass, I pick up the pitcher and gulp it down halfway. I am very thirsty, but the drink doesn't seem to quench my thirst at all. It seems to glide over the surface of my mouth, leaving it dry still. I now just try my best to ignore it and continue watching TV. I tell Steve I'll be right back and walk to the bathroom. While I piss, I look at the picture above my toilet. It's a cartoon of a polar bear lying on its back in the water, holding a wine glass like it fell asleep from being drunk. The concept makes me want to laugh. It seems like the dumbest cartoon in the world to me, and its location is just as random as its contents. I think to myself, why the fuck do we have a picture of a drunk polar bear in our bathroom? For some reason, this seems near hysterical to me. I walk out of the bathroom and go back to the couch with Steve. As soon as I sit down, my mom walked out of the kitchen and tells us she's going to work and to behave. She'll be back around 10. Steve and I say goodbye and she leaves. Perfect. Now we have the house to ourselves. Nothing much more seems to be happening. I have finished the pitcher of Kool-Aid and gone to the bathroom 2 more times. Steve says to go to the kitchen and refill the pitcher with water in case I feel like I'm going to dehydrate. It seems like a responsible idea, so I go into the kitchen and refill it with water and put ice cubes in it. I walk back into my living room to find Steve had left, and the TV has been turned off. The entire house is dead silent. Then I hear the TV go back on, but the screen is blank, and I hear Steve saying, "Hey, I'm over here." I realize that he's calling me from out in my backyard, so I put my shoes on and go outside. At first, I scanned my backyard for him, but couldn't see him, and I couldn't hear him anymore. I suddenly get the idea that Steve had come over for a hide and seek game. At this point, I have absolutely no idea that I have taken anything, so I run into the yard looking around for him. Then I speak, come out, wherever you are." Right when I say this, my voice sounds very different, like a person who has gone totally insane. This starts to scare me very much, and Steve is nowhere to be found. I look way across to the other end of my yard. My yard is only about 100-foot by 200-foot area, but now it was like a soccer field size. And at the other end, I see my dog's pen, a fenced-in area in the corner with all my friends who are straight edge that stopped being friends with me when I started smoking pot. I haven't seen them in so long, so I run towards the pen. They look just as happy to see me as I am to see them, and they let me into the pen. We start talking, and to my surprise, one of them pulls out a blunt out of nowhere and sparks it. I am naturally amused but shocked. Then they start to explain to me that they came to see me because they all got into the game and don't think drugs are that bad after all. On the outside, I am pleased to hear this, but on the inside, I begin to get feelings of untrust. These bastards abandoned me years back. I don't show any unpleasant feelings on the outside, and I continue to be cheery with them, although I keep a state of mind not to trust anyone there. They pass me the blunt, and I take a super long hit and hold it super long and blow out. After it went around a few times, we all spark a cigarette to increase our high. We just keep talking and talking. It seemed like time has stopped. How long can people just sit here and talk? It's been hours, I think to myself. Strangely enough, I am still puffing on the same cigarette, but don't notice anything unusual about it. Then I drop my butt, and it falls under the chair I'm sitting on. "Ah shit," I said, and got out of my seat to get it. I look under the chair, but I can't seem to find it. Did any of you see where as I turn around, I notice no one is there, and I am alone in the pen? A sense of anger comes over me, and I get intense feelings of, I shouldn't have trusted them, and how dare they. These feelings are followed by loneliness and then total fear. I need to get out of this pen and go back in the house. I walk back to my house across the long field, and it seems to take even longer to go back than when I had come. Next thing I know, I'm back in my kitchen lying on the floor, very sweaty. Steve is there sitting on the kitchen counter. My focus is very blurred and off, and I feel very confused about why he's there on the counter and I'm on the floor. But every few moments, I kinda snap back into reality and know exactly what's going on, then snap back into delirium and totally forget everything. Next thing I know, it's already 6:46 a.m. and I am running late. My mom tells me I only got a half hour to get ready or I'll get a Saturday detention. I scramble out of bed and run into the bathroom to take a shower. I suddenly realize how much school's gonna suck because I forgot to do my homework and I have an oral presentation due today. All these thoughts make me panic, and I know there's no way out of it because I already skipped school 3 times this year and got caught, and I can't skip another day or I will have to go to court. I get out of the shower and dry off as quickly as I can. Then I run into my room and get dressed and go downstairs to the kitchen. Right then, I noticed something was wrong. The clock said 1 a.m. and the calendar was on July. Nobody was up. My mom was asleep and had been asleep. She didn't wake me up for school. I did not have school in the summer. I wished I was dreaming, and the thoughts in my mind were on the brink of driving me insane. All I remember after this is running back up into my room in total panic, ready to cry and scream, and if one more weird thing happened, I was gonna off myself. I woke up in my bed with Steve on the floor watching me. He looked very concerned and asked me if I was okay now, if I was still tripping. I didn't know what to say to him because right then I could have still been tripping for all I know. It was 5 p.m. the next day. I had a bad headache and couldn't focus on anything. My whole body was in this dreadfully uncomfortable state. It took me a while to collect my thoughts and figure out I was not tripping anymore. And I had these series of strange, realistic dreams stuck in my head from when I was asleep, but I can't for the life of me remember what they were now. I forgot them completely about 4 hours after I woke up. From Steve's point of view, in a nutshell, I had started acting weird when I had gotten the water from the kitchen. He said that he was trying to talk to me, but I would just have this blank stare like I couldn't see him. And then I ran outside into my shed in the backyard and started talking to myself. And after an hour or so, I ran out of the shed with this scared shitless look on my face and fell down and crawled back into the house, into the bathroom, and he said I was trying to drink out of the toilet. He pulled me up and carried me into the kitchen and put me down on the floor and got me some ice. He said I was talking in my sleep and saying random words in no logical order whatsoever, but I was saying them fluently, like I knew what I was talking about. Before my mom came home, he carried me upstairs and put me to bed, and stayed up to watch me. And he said I was talking out loud and moving around like I was having some nightmares. And around midnight, I sprang out of bed and ran into the bathroom and got in the shower for an hour. And then I went back into my room and put on a shirt backwards, some boxers, but no pants, and ran downstairs and stood in the kitchen for 10 minutes, just standing there. He said then I was freaked out and ran upstairs into my room, and he said he had to push me onto my bed and hold me down until I stopped moving and eventually fell asleep. Then he did. He woke up around 10 that day, and I slept until 5. To sum it up in one word, insanity. That's what it feels like when you start to snap out of it and realize what's happening. But then you just go back into this state of total confusion, and it's enough to drive anyone crazy. Overall, I'm glad I experienced this just to know what it's like, but this is not for everyone, and I'm not saying the experience was at all pleasant, so I have no motivation to do it again anytime soon, maybe someday years from now, just for some crazy fun. But this Datura seems to be something not of this world. The hallucinations were accompanied by delirium and confusion, which made them seem real and like I wasn't really tripping. This stuff truly is made by the devil. Nightmares in flux. First of all, I would like to let you all know that this is not a party drug. This is a very powerful, very poisonous plant. It is nothing at all compared to something like acid, and yes, it can kill you in a variety of ways. I had almost total amnesia after this experience. This report is compiled of things I have remembered over the past 3 years. Kessler and I have both been diagnosed as schizophrenic in the past year. Is it coincidence, or did the Datura have something to do with it? One night in early October of 2001, I was house sitting at my friend Cassie's house in downtown Savannah. My friend Kessler was there house sitting too. We were just sitting around smoking and drinking a little bit. Cassie and her roommates were at a rave in South Carolina. Eventually we fell asleep. The crew arrived home early the next morning. We were sitting around, passing the bong, talking and stuff. Cassie gave Kessler and I a small bag full of black seeds in a crimson liquid. I had no idea what they were, neither did Kessler. Cassie explained to us that it was Jimson weed. I still had no idea. Neither of us had ever heard of it. I was a stupid kid, so I didn't even research it. Cassie told me that it was enough to make about 5 people trip nuts. Now, Kessler and I were psychonauts, so we thought her definition of tripping nuts was probably a bit different from ours. So we just divided the seeds in half and ate them. I'd say we each had about 70 fat, juicy seeds, and we each drank the liquid, whatever that was. I had done acid, ecstasy, and a lot of other stuff before this point, but nothing could prepare me for the world that I was about to enter. I guess this would be a good place to explain something. The hallucinations from Datura stramonium are very strong. They are very bizarre, but seem natural. What I mean is, everything is very, very odd, but seems real. More real than reality, if that makes any sense to you. Kessler and I waited for about an hour or two and still weren't feeling anything. We went to the house and chilled out for a while. We were starting to get very tired. We decided to go back to Cassie's house so we could stay up. We got there and we were feeling very drunk by this time, ultra sloshed. Drunker than I have ever been, and I've been pretty drunk. I fell asleep on Cassie's couch. When I awoke, I was feeling even more drunk. I couldn't even stand up. My girlfriend at the time, Beth, drove me home. I don't remember, but she said that on the way home, I kept on taking my lighter out on the dash and trying to hit it like it was a pipe. When I arrived home, that's when it hit me really hard. I went into my bathroom and got online to check my email. Suddenly, I saw a miniature version of myself walk out of my monitor. He sat down on the computer desk and started talking to me. We had a very deep conversation about life, love, and many other things. Then he told me that I needed to go get some water. I went to the bathroom and filled a cup up with water and a bottle cap for my little friend. When I looked in the mirror, it wasn't me that I saw. It was a bloody mess. My face was mutilated beyond recognition. I started washing my face, but the more I washed, the bloodier it seemed to get. After about an hour, the blood just disappeared and I was able to recognize myself again. I went back to my room and my little friend was gone. I heard a knock at the front door as soon as I got back to my room. I went to see who it was, and when I opened the door, I was in for a surprise. I think that everyone I had ever known was there, even people I had forgotten about. This makes me think that Datura has the power to unlock forgotten memories. I let the hundreds of people in, and we all went to my room, which is strange, because I had a very small room, but everyone was there. I was talking to and catching up with everyone. People kept on disappearing and reappearing in random places in my room. People also kept dying, decaying, and eventually disappearing. I was worried, but soon forgot all about it. There was also this one guy with a Chick-fil-A cup as a head. He would keep dying, decaying, and coming back to life. I tried to kick everyone out, but I couldn't seem to get the Chick-fil-A guy to leave. Every time I tried to pick up the bones, they would turn to sand. He would then be reborn from the sand. I was eventually getting really pissed off and quite freaked out. My friend Superman appeared from somewhere and helped me out. He tried to pick up the bones and they turned to sand, so he pulled out a broom from somewhere and swept the guy out the front door. Superman came back into my room dragging a large cross. He talked to me as he proceeded to crucify himself. When he was completely hung up on the cross, he started to become very disfigured. He then exploded into ashes. I was horrified. What had happened to my friend? I gathered the ashes up in a dustpan and took them to the kitchen sink. I dumped the ashes into the sink and ran water on them. A new Superman grew right out of my sink. He thanked me for bringing him back to life and hastily left. I decided to go for a walk. I saw my car in the parking lot and it was wrecked very badly. I was upset. I went over and tried to open the door, but the whole car melted at my touch. Then I leaned up against a tree and the tree melted. I figured out that I had the power to melt things just by touching them. Then I had the idea to touch myself. I did, and nothing happened. I got very lost and it took me hours to realize that I was just in the parking lot in front of my apartment. I wanted to go back inside, but I couldn't. I had locked the door and already had melted the keys on accident. The power eventually went away, so I used my ID to try to break into my house. I couldn't do it. I walked away and found my keys back in their solid state. I used my keys and let myself in. I soon noticed that my ID was missing. I went to take a shower, and when I got my clothes off, I noticed that my family jewels were gone. I was freaked out, but I figured there was nothing I could do about this. I got in the shower and started to wash. When I got out of the shower and went back into my room, there was a 7-foot tall totem pole staring at me. The totem pole was my CD tower. We had a conversation, then the strangest thing happened. Time started to slow down, slower and slower, until it eventually stopped. Everything around me was suspended in time. My cat was frozen, my totem pole, who was talking to me just a minute ago, was now frozen in time with his mouth open in mid-sentence. This was very strange. Eventually, time came back. Remember, it all seemed very natural at the time. Beth had come over to check on me. We were sitting there talking for hours, and as we talked, I slowly began to come down. The phone rang, and I went to pick it up. It was Beth. How was this possible? I looked over at the Beth on my bed, and she began to fade into nothing, waving at me as she went. This was the last major hallucination that I had. About my ID that had come up missing, I was so messed up on Datura that I was trying to break into the wrong house. The next day, I got a knock at the door. It was the lady who lived in apartment 703. She told me that she had found my ID in her door. I wasn't even gonna try to explain. The after effects of this stuff are wicked. I couldn't see anything clearly for about a week. I also felt strange for almost a month. It was like a month-long acid trip. I was having minor hallucinations for weeks. Hopefully those stories painted a pretty good picture of the horrors that Datura can induce, and I hope that you found me talking about this really crazy and interesting drug entertaining. I'm really glad that other people out there have tried it so that I don't have to. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and comment because it helps me out, and if you want to see more content like this, you can subscribe because I post a new video every week. My name is Chase, this has been Scare Files, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.